yourself a cold one.
They strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings. And I can't believe we made it. We're finally here. It is officially week one of the college football season. As a reminder, and for anybody that might be a new listener or somebody checking us out on YouTube, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. We kind of look at this show as like three different podcasts, three for the price of one, because number one, we're going to talk about the biggest games in college football, right? So it's a college football podcast. Number two, Emory is going to give you at least a couple NFL draft prospects to watch in each of these games. So it's an NFL draft podcast. Number three, Emory's going to make his picks against the spread. So it is also a college football betting podcast. So three for the price of one. The Emory, of course, I'm referring to is the great Emory Hunt. You can check him out at FBall Game Plan on Twitter, Football Game Plan on YouTube. Love the draft guide. Footballgameplan.com/2024 draft guide. Might be time now to move on to the next one. Oh, go ahead.
It's ready. Footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. You can pre-order it now.
I love it. Why not? Get ready, because it'll be coming out usually in March. And one of the most gratifying things for me every August is anytime somebody nobody's ever heard of is making plays in preseason games, Emory or somebody else tweets the scouting report that Emory has on the guy from college, which is just awesome. Absolutely awesome. I think most of you know I'm Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman, long time ago now at this point, but it enabled me to get all these broadcasting gigs. I start my college schedule this week, UCLA at Hawaii. So I will be traveling to Honolulu, Hawaii on Wednesday. That game will be prime time, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday night on CBS. Actually, 1:30 Hawaiian time. So that might be really hot for those guys. Depth will be an issue. 1:30 in Honolulu, middle of the day. That's going to be a scorcher, I think, for those guys. So that aspect of it will be interesting for sure. But Emory, it's time, man. It's time to dive in to some of these games, which is great. Love those of you that check me out on social media at Ross Tucker NFL or us at Ross Tucker Pod. And certainly those of you that watch us, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Let's start with Miami at Florida. It's so funny because Miami and Florida State always used to play. And Florida and Florida State always used to play. I don't really remember back in the day, Emory, Miami and Florida playing.
Rarely it happened. I think the last time it happened was Florida when they was wearing those orange jerseys with Emmitt Smith, right? You didn't see it a lot. You used to always see Florida and Florida State and Miami play, in Florida State, obviously. But yeah, so this is something, recent that we're seeing, and I'm glad we're going to check it out because it's going to be a really good pivotal game in terms of the college football playoff landscape, as we already saw week 0 gave us a stunner.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. Before we even get to this game, your thoughts on Florida State, Georgia Tech in week 0, or really any of the other week 0 games. Nevada was hanging with SMU for a while. I like, hey, whether it's your college football thoughts, Emory, or specific scouting thoughts, that you saw, I do want to make sure we take the time every week to just kind of get your feedback on the weekend that was.
Well, both games that you brought up tied in my biggest win and my biggest loss. My biggest win was Georgia Tech plus 11 and a half, because watching Georgia Tech over the summer, you realize, and just going back to the bowl game, man, I was like, these dudes got some talent. If they could just cover Javon Baker, they'll be fine. But that's where UCF was killing those guys, just throwing it up to Baker. And I'm glad the corner, Emory Harvey, I believe his name is, had a great game against Florida State. So he was able to come back out in his next game and play great, along with what Haynes King was doing in the run game. And so I kind of knew Georgia Tech would keep that one close, because this was the point I kept making all weekend leading up to that game. In all games, you have all summer, all spring to practice for one opponent. These games would be a lot closer than people think. Now, my biggest miss was taking SMU minus 24 and a half, 27 and a half. I just felt like Nevada is in a rebuild. SMU has a lot to prove, because they're finally on the big stage, the national stage, and this is going to be their coming out party. And listen, pride still matters in college football, because Nevada came out there and beat SMU up front on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And I was like, listen, I may have to rethink Nevada's win total 2.5 to go over that, you know what I'm saying, because of how well they played physically up front. And SMU needed all of their goodwill and graces to come back in that ball game, but Nevada was a problem for them physically.
Wow, I love it. Good point too about the opener and what that means. But yeah, I mean, Delaware State. I watched the Hawaii Delaware State game this morning, and it was 14-14 in the third quarter. So if there was a theme from week 0 that I would take away, Emory, I guess it would just be that take the points, take the underdogs and the points, because Georgia Tech, Nevada, Hawaii, Delaware State, a lot of these teams that were underdogs and times heavy underdogs, they were able to hang and at times hang for a while.
Yeah, and I mean, that's going to be a common theme with these week 1 matchups. It's going to be a lot of close games. I probably lean more to the unders, but yeah, you're right. Like, you have spring ball, summer workout, summer ball, training camp to get ready for a week 1 matchup. That's why it's best to schedule these option teams in week 0, week 1, as opposed to any other week or bowl season, as opposed to any other week in college football.
All right, so now let's get back to Miami and Florida. Miami's laying 2.5, but first, give me a prospect on each team.
Well, we talked a lot about Cam Ward, so let's talk about Damian Martinez, the transfer from Oregon State. You saw him live, Ross, against San Jose State when you called the game out there last year, and this dude can tote the mail, like legitimately a bell cow back. You could drop him into the NFL right now, and he'd be a starter. That's how good he is, which is why we're excited to see him and Mark Fletcher, team up as in a tandem backfield. So I think Martinez has good vision, good contact balance, good burst, gives you everything that you want at the position. And I've been a big fan of Graham Mertz, the quarterback of Florida, since coming out of high school. And I'm glad he got things turned around a little bit at Wisconsin before he transferred. Last year, I thought he didn't play as bad as people made it out to be. He actually played rather well. He throws well on the move. The ball comes out on time. He's got good accuracy. So all of the things that you want to see from a quarterback, he's playing efficient football. I think Graham Mertz, if they can, continue to find some great talent on the outside, he could surprise a lot of people come April in terms of what the scouts think of him as a pro prospect.
Miami's laying 2.5 in this game, Emory. Miami has high expectations for like the 20th year in a row. They're playing at Florida. The game is in Gainesville. So that's interesting to me that Miami's laying the points. Your thoughts on Miami laying 2.5 at Florida?
I would lay these with Miami. I just trust that the Hurricanes' stacked talent on offense will put Florida's defense in the bind. I think that's where this game can be won. Cam Ward is a Heisman contender. Miami has 3 excellent receivers, 2 great running backs. The defense is going to be solid, and I feel like the offensive line is going to be stable. So when you have a special player at quarterback along with talent, it makes it easier to predict this team to win on the road in a hostile environment. This is not just Miami versus Florida. This is recruiting battles. This is state bragging rights. So all of that matters. So it will be a tight game, which explains the 2.5. But I'll take Miami to cover that.
Just got to win by a field goal, and you will be all set there. Cam Ward, this would be a big game for his Heisman hopes. I know it's just the opener, but it's a big game. A lot of people watching. This is an opportunity for him for sure. So Miami minus the 2.5 for Emory. Your next game, we got North Dakota State at Colorado. We're going to do something a little different this year, Emory. Every week, we are going to have your best bet, which is something you're going to be looking for every week. It's In the Hunt, presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. This is your best bet of the week. Why are you laying the 9.5 with Colorado against North Dakota State?
Colorado knows what's at stake if they lose this game. And a lot of people expect them to lose this game or not even cover based off the opponent, North Dakota State, who has been the FBS killer forever. And the question is this North Dakota State team the same North Dakota State team? And I think this is a different North Dakota State team because of the quarterback situation. They don't have one of those guys that you really have to significantly worry about. Their offense wasn't as dynamic last season as it has been in recent years, which is why we've seen the rise of South Dakota State back-to-back national champions at the FCS level. So combine that with Colorado having the best quarterback in the country, the number one NFL draft prospect at the quarterback position, in my opinion, in Shedeur Sanders, with a dynamic receiving core, improvement along the offensive line, and now a newfound running game with Pat Shurmur calling the plays and understanding how to call a game and get the balance going, in a defense that still has Travis Hunter out there. And they've improved defensively as well, especially along the front. So for me, this is a different Colorado team. I know people have their feelings about Deion Sanders, and I think that's what's clouding their judgment on the actual football part. But this is a different Colorado team. This is a different North Dakota State team. I'm laying these 9.5 points comfortably with the Buffaloes.
Speaking of the Buffaloes, they have a wide receiver that you want to highlight, but might not be the one that other people would be thinking about. It's not the top 5 pick, Travis Hunter. It's Jimmy Horn.
Yeah, because Jimmy Horn, to me, because we talked about Travis Hunter a lot, and I still think he should stay at cornerback because he got the ball skills. If you can catch picks, I want you on my team. That takes away one half of the field because the quarterback is not going to throw it that way. But for Jimmy Horn, I look at him. He's going to be a slot guy. He's about 5'8", maybe 180-something pounds. Yes, he can make plays on the outside, but I think his home will be in the slot. But where I like him as a prospect with this new kickoff rule in the NFL, he's dynamic in that capacity also. So for me, not only does he has value as a receiver, but he has value as a return specialist. And we know now that I guess they call it dynamic kickoff. It's still the XFL kickoff. Shout out to my guy, Sam Schwartzstein, for coming up with that whole, a doggone innovator. So I'm taking Jimmy Horn as a kickoff specialist and just envisioning him having a multiple layered role as a pro player.
Before we get to the North Dakota State prospect, I want to make sure everyone knows this weekend, college football, week 1, drink some Labatt Blue Light with your friends. Live life to the power of we. Always enjoy responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. All right, Emory, who's the prospect to watch for the Bison?
Eli Mostert, the defensive tackle. Ross, this dude is like 6'2", 280. He's ideal 3-tech in terms of like body type, how quick he is off the ball, how he can win with leverage because he gets underneath the pads of these offensive linemen because he has a natural leverage being at 6'2", going up against guys that's 6'4", 6'5". So he's getting pushed. He's getting pressure. He closes well on the ball carrier and the quarterback. This is somebody that Colorado better have a key on because he could be a game wrecker on the interior.
Next game up is Clemson at Georgia. Georgia's laying 13.5. Who are the prospects to watch first, Emory?
Clemson's linebacker Barrett Carter is one of the best backers in college football. As I was grading Jeremiah Trotter Jr., you also are watching Barrett Carter do a lot of amazing things too. So for me, in this particular ball game, this is a chance for him to shine because we know how Georgia wants to play. They want to have a physical discussion every play, and Barrett, to me, is someone that's capable of having that physical discussion with Georgia consistently, and he has good speed to where he can chase Trevor Etienne, all throughout the game. That's gonna be a nice, fun matchup to watch. And for Georgia, Nazir Stackhouse, Georgia seems to always have one of these large body defensive linemen that's in the way, and in the way in a good way, because Stackhouse is in the way. You can't ignore him, can't get around him, and he can clog up any type of, he throws off your interior run game based off his ability just to occupy gaps. If you can't move your guards and move and get creative in your movement, it's over. And he's someone that's going to be a big problem for Clemson if they can't keep him contained at the line of scrimmage or get some type of movement or don't allow him to get penetration.
Man, Georgia's got a lot of good players. I'm just thinking about Malachi Starks, that safety, Michael Williams, the edge guy. I did their game against Vanderbilt last year. They got a lot of those guys back. I mean, I know they lost guys too, but still. All right, so Georgia's laying 13.5 at home. Wow. Clemson, when's the last time Clemson was getting 13.5 points? Which way are you going, Emory?
This is the show me game. This game should be held in Missouri because you got Carson Beck, who has to step up in the big game. You got Cade Klubnik, who has to step up in the big game. One of you guys got to show me something, right? So this is going to be a very good ball game. And people discredit Clemson raw. So I want to say, what, the last 10 years, while Clemson was in their little dynasty run, every year we look up, there's about, 3 or 4 Clemson D linemen getting drafted, O linemen finding a way on NFL rosters. So they can play the physical game with Georgia at the point of attack. I feel like because of the week 1 situation, because of how big this game is for Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers and the ACC, this one will be a lot closer than that 2-touchdown spread. So I'm going to take Clemson in the points here in its opener.
Okay. Got Emory down for getting the points. 13.5 for the Clemson Tigers against the Georgia Bulldogs. Okay, this is a juicy matchup, this next one. I'm excited about this. South Dakota State at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is laying 9.5. Some cool prospects in this game, including South Dakota State quarterback Mark Gronowski. Feels like he's been there a while, Emory. Tell me about him.
He has, and it says we had that COVID year where they went to the national championship game. We all got introduced to Isaiah Davis, who's with the New York Jets. Gronowski is a really good quarterback, man, and does a great job at working at the intermediate levels of the field, which is where you win and have success at the pro level. He's also a good athlete, so he can burn you in terms of like picking up those cheap yards, kind of like what we saw Haynes King do against Florida State. Gronowski can do the same thing. And I like the fact that he's been battle tested. This is a back-to-back national champion. He won the Walter Payton Award last year, which is the FCS Heisman Trophy. So this is a really good team. And even though they had 2 offensive linemen that went off to the NFL, this offensive line has great talent. So we'll see another South Dakota State Jackrabbit offensive lineman either get drafted or end up in a high-level all-star game before getting on an NFL roster. So South Dakota State has talent. So you got the best team in the FCS, my preseason number 1 on CBS Sports, going up against my Big 12 champion preseason prediction in Oklahoma State. And for Oklahoma State is Ollie Gordon. So because Ollie Gordon plays like a pro already, I think what's underrated about Gordon is his receiving skills. Like, they flex him out, they throw him the football comfortably. So we may see him utilized more. So obviously he's going to get the ball as, carrying the ball as a runner, but as a receiver and take advantage of his matchup, exploit the matchup that he has as a route runner. So Ollie Gordon can do it on both ends of offense. And that's why I think both Gronowski and Gordon are the prospects to watch here.
Oklahoma State laying 9.5. Emory, what are you doing?
Ross, this is now if South Dakota State was playing Colorado, that's the one you get excited about. But when you look at Oklahoma State, 20 returning starters. That's heavy game experience. And this is a week one situation, so we avoid the Oklahoma State doing Oklahoma State things like they'll beat Oklahoma one week, come back the next week and lose to DeVry. They're going to be ready for this ball game. So I would lay these 9.5 points with South Dakota State. We won't have a Montana State, New Mexico situation in this one. I would say this is a team, experienced team on both sides of the line of scrimmage that should take advantage and be able to salt this game away. It'll be a low-scoring game. 17-7 helps us cash tickets. So I'm going to lay the 9.5 with Oklahoma State.
All right, Emory's down for laying 9.5. Oklahoma State against South Dakota State. What about Western Kentucky at Bama? Bama's laying 31. The total's 59.5.
Take Western Kentucky and the points. Western Kentucky can score. The matchup is because the quarterback of Western Kentucky, Big Ponchatoula, TJ Finley. Been excited about him since I watched him in high school. I love that he went to Western Kentucky. They're going to let him throw the football 85 times a game. And the secondary of Alabama is going to be the question to watch all season long. But Damani Jackson, the USC transfer, is a star. Another one of these high school phenoms that's a really good player too. And the secondary versus the passing game of Western Kentucky is the reason why I'm taking Western Kentucky plus the points. Alabama plus minus 31. That's kind of tough. We know they usually don't cover these big numbers, especially against a game opponent in Western Kentucky. So I'm gonna take them plus the points. I might even go over the total as well.
Notre Dame is at Texas A&M. The Aggies are laying 3. Who are the prospects to watch?
The prospects for Notre Dame, Benjamin Morrison. Some may have him as the number 1 corner in college football. That's listen. If you told me that, I agree with you because he's someone that is just outstanding on a perimeter. Physical, ball skills, instinct, technique. You checking all these boxes. And Shamar Turner, the defensive tackle for A&M. Ross, this dude is legitimately a stud. And when you're watching A&M defensively, he is someone that is always in the play or active in the play or affecting the play. And I'm excited for this game just from a football perspective because we remember this, Ross, like the Cotton Bowl classics. Yeah, Notre Dame, the Tim Brown game with A&M beat them around. Then they come back in 92, the Bettis game with the Killer Bees, Becton, Bettis, and Burris, you know what I'm saying? So they beat them, down in the Mobile Classic as well. So I like this game from a football perspective, but I'm also laying these points with A&M. Elko, with the 5-star talent defensively, should take care of business against Notre Dame. And he knows the guy that is starting at quarterback for Notre Dame. He knows how to attack him. I think there's a lot of, schematic things that he can do to ensure they cover the spread.
Last but not least, USC at LSU. 2 of the big brands in college football. LSU is laying 4. Playing at home, and there's a couple of defenders that you want to highlight.
Because that's going to be the difference in this ball game. Let's start with USC's Jamil Muhammad. I love the fact that he is someone that can really get off the ball. Because when the biggest acquisition USC made this offseason was DeAnton Lynn, the defensive coordinator that was at UCLA. And we saw what he had to work with at UCLA and what they did USC's offense last year with Latu and all those guys like Murphy. All the Murphys was up front, doing a great job. Now they just have to buy into his system, but Muhammad is a great starting piece. And Nussmeier, the quarterback, is not the most mobile guy, so we should see a lot of Muhammad versus Nussmeier in this ball game. Although LSU has 2 great elite tackles, we can talk about a lot of prospects, but for LSU is Harold Perkins. How can he frustrate Miller Moss in the pocket as well? How much will they deploy him in coverage? How much will they just use him just to blitz? Either way, these are 2 top-tier pass rushers that we'll get to see in this ball game. And to put the icing on the cake, I'm taking USC on the money line, Ross. I am bypassing the points. Give me USC to win outright against LSU.
What? Emory, USC money line, huh?
Yep.
Wow. I forget who your pick was for A&M Notre Dame.
I lead the points with A&M because of the Mike Elko factor going up against his own quarterback and Riley Leonard on the other side.
Oh, that's a good point as well. Check him out on social media at FBall Game Plan. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We are at Ross Tucker Pod. The keg is kicked just like it was Saturday night. I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to College Draft. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Money, and Fantasy Feast, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.